What's up, Taiwan? Good evening. I'm Ethan Liu with 10 minutes of news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan officials have confirmed that the country will drop its quarantine requirement for people arriving in the country starting October 13th. This comes as authorities on Thursday raised the cap on visitors and allow citizens from more countries to enter Taiwan visa-free. Rick Lawert has more details.
It's the first day of Taiwan fully reopening to tourists after more than 2 years of strict border controls. Here at Songshan Airport, the largest in the capital, entry rules are beginning to return to normal. Tourists from more than 60 countries will now be able to enter Taiwan without a visa. Taiwan is raising the cap on how many people can enter the country and also dropping PCR tests on arrival, though people will still need to quarantine for 3 days. With its proximity to China, where COVID-19 originated in 2019, Taiwan was one of the first countries in the world to start restricting entry. Pursuing a COVID-0 policy, the island country has been closed off to tourists throughout much of the pandemic. Residents entering Taiwan have had to undergo testing and quarantine. It is now one of the last countries in the world to open up, bringing relief to the tourism industry, but also trepidation from citizens as Taiwan shifts to living with the virus. Authorities say they will be monitoring this latest stage in relaxing COVID measures, but they plan to further raise the cap on arrivals and drop all entry requirements, including quarantine, by the middle of October. Andy Xue and Rick Lawert at Songshan Airport for TaiwanPlus.
A House Republican has introduced a version of the proposed Taiwan Policy Act in committee. It is different from the version that's been approved by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. A press release says the act is meant to strengthen Taiwan's defense and deter the aggression of the Chinese Communist Party. Both versions of the Taiwan Policy Act still have a way to go before they reach President Biden's desk. They need approval from the full House and Senate before they can be signed into law. The House version has some differences from the Senate's. For example, it keeps a proposal that was removed from the Senate version, which would rename Taiwan's de facto embassy in Washington. Both versions include up to $6.5 billion in financing for military sales to Taiwan. Taiwan's foreign ministry responded to the news on Thursday.
外交部我们会持续跟美国的国会还有美国的行政的部门来紧密的沟通。我们期待能够在这个会期持续争取到美国国会的友人以立法的行动来深化台湾跟美国友好的伙伴关系。
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris was in South Korea on Thursday for the second stop of her Asian tour. Her arrival came just hours after North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles off its east coast late on Wednesday. But as James Chater reports, comments she made earlier in the tour about Taiwan are also flaring tensions in the region.
The United States and South Korea reinforcing their alliance with the visit of US Vice President Kamala Harris to Seoul, here meeting with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol.
For 7 decades, the alliance between the United States and the Republic of Korea has been a linchpin of security and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and in the Indo-Pacific and throughout the globe.
Harris arrives on the second leg of her trip to Asia as relationships across the region are tested. Hours before Harris landed, North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles off its east coast, a move condemned by the White House and Japan's defense ministry.
また、ウクライナへの侵略が発生している中で、立て続けにミサイルを発射していることは許されません。関連する安保理決議に違反するものであり、強く非難いたします。北朝鮮に対しては、北京の大使館ルートを通じて抗議を行いました。
In Japan, Harris attended the state funeral of assassinated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the initial purpose of her trip to the region. But her tour is being conducted as rivalry between the US and China intensifies. While in Tokyo, she met with the Prime Minister of Australia, a fellow member of the Quad Regional Security Pact, formed under the shadow of rising US-China competition. And in meetings with Japanese semiconductor business chiefs, she warned of supply chain overdependence on Beijing. But it was in comments about Taiwan, which Beijing claims as part of its territory, that Harris's view on China was clearest.
China has flexed its military and economic might to coerce and intimidate its neighbors. And we have witnessed disturbing behavior in the East China Sea and in the South China Sea. And most recently, provocations across the Taiwan Strait.
In response, Beijing said when it came to policy on Taiwan, the US had double standards.
美方连自己做出的承诺都不遵守，还有什么资格谈论规则和秩序？恐怕只能成为国际规则的破坏者。
At Abe's funeral, a momentary pause from the pointed rhetoric. But with China hissing back at Harris's comments on Taiwan and North Korea firing more ballistic missiles, the US Vice President's trip appears to be laying bare the volatility simmering beneath the surface of East Asia. Klein Wang and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
In the meantime, the United States is hosting Pacific Island leaders at a two-day summit in Washington, its latest move to counter the growing influence of China in the region. 4 out of Taiwan's 14 diplomatic allies are South Pacific countries. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick reports.
Leaders from a dozen Pacific Island nations are in the White House for a first-of-its-kind summit, bringing heads of government from across the ocean together with their counterparts in Washington.
This summit reflects our deep and enduring partnership with the Pacific Islands, one that's underpinned by shared history, values, and enduring people-to-people ties. Together, we'll discuss the challenges that we face, exchange ideas and perspectives, and chart a way forward to deliver on the issues that matter most to our people.
U.S. engagement with the region has been developing at what has been called warp speed since last spring. That was when China and the Solomon Islands inked a new security pact, paving the way for a possible Chinese military presence in the South Pacific. It was a rude awakening for the United States. And as Beijing further advances its relations with South Pacific countries, Washington is stepping up its charm offensive.
What I hope that you take away from these engagements is that the United States shares your vision, and we're committed to help realize it. It's a vision that recognizes that only by working together can we actually tackle the biggest challenges of our time that confront all of our citizens, from combating the climate crisis and health emergencies, to promoting economic opportunity, to preserving a free and open Indo-Pacific where every nation, no matter how big, no matter how small, has the right to choose its own path.
The assembled leaders are due to meet DC's most powerful figures, including climate envoy John Kerry, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. U.S. President Joe Biden will address them on the summit's second day. This renewed esteem from Washington has been welcomed by some in the region.
The Pacific Islands Forum family welcomes this opportunity to set the USA towards becoming the true Pacific power it can become. We saw this when both President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris addressed the forum leaders. We see it today.
This is the first time the United States has hosted so many leaders of a region it has considered its maritime backyard since World War II.
This upcoming week will be the most significant engagement between the Pacific Island Forum and the United States in a generation. The fact that the Pacific leaders will be sharing a room with the U.S. President and the entire machinery of the U.S. government tells us how far we have come.
But a united front may prove elusive. The Solomon Islands Beijing-friendly administration, which switched allegiances from Taiwan to China in 2019, has signaled it is unlikely to sign a joint statement with the U.S. Others remain dissatisfied with U.S. financial assistance to the Pacific. The summit is unlikely to close the book on the differences across this vast region. But as competition heats up, it could be the start of a new chapter. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we leave you with images of Formula One driver Lando Norris with a life-sized Lego McLaren race car in Singapore ahead of the 2022 Singapore Grand Prix this weekend. I'm Ethan Liu. Take care, and I'll see you next time.